Hello and welcome to this week's Glasstire Top 5. It is the week of September 20th, 2018. I'm Christina Rees.
I'm Rainey Knudson.
And we are counting down the top 5 art events in Texas this week.
So number 5 is at UTEP, at the Rubin Center in El Paso. It is Betsabeé Romero, the Mexico City artist. The name of the show is Tu Huella es el Camino. Your footprint is the path. She is best well known for her work with tires. She uses all kinds of tires, both, regular cars, but also transportation, sort of public transportation vehicles, buses. And she carves designs into them that are drawn from sort of indigenous patterns, traditional decorative Mexican patterns that you would see in fabrics and stuff. They're really beautiful. They're strangely compelling. It's something that could be kind of kitsch, but she pulls it off more often than not. And they're just really beautiful objects. I like them a lot. I'm excited to see this show. And I think there's other works other than the tire works in this show as well.
So number 4 this week opens at Cinnabar this weekend in San Antonio. It's Mari Hernandez and Christian Fuchs. It's called Montagues and Capulets. This is 2 different bodies of work by 2 different artists. He is based in Peru. She is San Antonio. We've just recently run a really beautiful Wally film question for her. We're going to be doing that over 16 weeks with 4 different San Antonio artists. I think that this body of work that she's showing is her Ombre series, where both of these are artists, by the way, who do self-portraits in costume and prosthetic makeup and that sort of thing. So she's depicting herself as various men from history, a kind of revolutionary history, and then he depicts himself as his various ancestors. So a lot of costume, a lot of makeup, a lot of prosthetics, really big, beautiful, juicy photographs.
He's dealing with the weight of his lineage, which is an impressive and old, going back generations, family in Peru. I think he's related to a former president of Peru. And obviously, there's fancy 19th century portraits of these people that he's drawing on. This kind of stuff, you can't, it's hard to look at it outside of the context of Cindy Sherman, who's maybe pioneered all this, but I think it's going to be really fun to see it. I think it's an interesting pairing, maybe an obvious pairing, but nonetheless.
I mean, it'll be a people-pleasing show, that's for sure. We like to look at people. We like to look at people in photographs, so.
I like to look at people. Speaking of crowd pleasers, number 3 in Houston is Sharon Engelstein and Aaron Parazette. This is at McClain Gallery. Sharon and Aaron are life partners. They've been together for 30 years, over 30 years, I think. They met in Florida in their youth. And this show is going to pair Sharon's ceramic sculptures with Aaron's paintings. And lots of people are familiar with their work. They're really looking at how these 2 artists who live together, whose studios are adjacent to each other, have maybe influenced each other. What is the dialogue between their work, if there is one at all? And I think the thesis of the show is that, yes, there is some kind of dialogue going on there. But these are just 2 artists who've been at it for a long time in Houston and are very, very well respected.
So number 2 this week is at the Meadows Museum at SMU in Dallas. This is called Dali, Poetics of the Small. This is a lot of Dali's very, very small jewel-like paintings that he did in what we kind of think of as his prime, which I think is 1929 to 1936, when he really established himself as a prime surrealist. You can see the evolution of his work. I love it that they're tiny and the rooms are lighted perfectly. And I think there are only about 20 in the show. And there are oil on board and oil and collage and tempera on board. And I like how much presence the paint has. If you ever doubted Dalí because in his later years he was just such a showman, this kind of will bring you back to believing in him again as an artist and as a painter and as a person having these earnest ideas that he really explored fully. It's a jewel of a show. They borrowed work from all over, private collections, institutions. They had acquired a piece in 2013, 2014, I think, and it was one of these small, beautiful paintings, and that's what led to the research that led to this show.
I just want to give a shout out to the Meadows, generally speaking, because they're a permanent collection. I think sometimes people don't necessarily think of it, particularly outside of Dallas. But they have such good stuff. They have probably my single favorite Goya I've ever seen. I love going upstairs in that fussy, boring mansion building and looking around at the permanent collection. It's really, really strong.
Yeah, no, it is. The Meadows is great. It's easy to forget about it because it's a university campus gallery or museum, but we don't need to underestimate how much money there is how good the research is, how good the curation is, and what art that they have access to, because they've specialized in Spanish art over the years, and they've found a niche, and it works incredibly well for them.
And number one this week is the long-awaited launch of the Pete Gershon book, Collision, The Contemporary Art Scene in Houston, 1972, 1985. We've got copies.
Yes, we do.
It's big. I wasn't expecting this book to be this big, and I don't want to say I wasn't expecting it to be this good. It's really, really good. It's very interesting. It's very thorough. The artists really speak. It's interviews with all these artists, and it's only 13 years in Houston, but you realize just 13 years was a monumental undertaking for Pete to do this. It took him years to do this.
Yeah, he's been working on it since at least 2013, maybe before. It's so thorough, and it seems to be, according to Houston artists, accurate. And he's what a tireless endeavor. I'm interviewing him right now for an interview for the site ahead of this Sunday appearance, and I don't know. I'm very, very impressed with this book. I'm also jealous because I want somebody to do the same treatment on Dallas.
It was years in the making, and it's substantial. It was published. Shout out to Texas A&M Press, who published it. They stepped up to bat for this book, and I'm really glad they did. I think they're doing some really interesting arts publishing. Anyway, this Sunday afternoon, he will be speaking at the MFAH and signing books. So if you're in Houston, if you have anything to do with Houston art, you need to be there for this event, and you need to get this book. And this is probably the best book that's been written about art in Houston ever.
Ever.